The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the small courthouse, casting long golden rectangles onto the polished wooden floors. The air smelled faintly of old books, polished wood, and the metallic tang of anticipation. Outside, a modest crowd had gathered, curious about the case that had suddenly drawn local attention. Lily, a 10-year-old girl with sharp eyes that seemed too old for her small frame, walked into the courtroom, clutching a folded piece of paper tightly in her hands. She paused at the threshold, looking up at the stern face of Judge Harris, a man known for his dry humor and long tenure on the bench. "My mom is a Navy SEAL," Lily declared. Her voice wavered slightly at first, but gained strength as she continued. There was a collective intake of breath. A few people in the gallery laughed softly, thinking it a child's exaggeration. Others exchanged confused looks, unsure if they had heard correctly. The judge, a man who had presided over hundreds of hearings in his 30 years, leaned back in his chair, his mouth twitching into what he assumed would be an indulgent smile. "A Navy SEAL?" he said, voice laced with amusement. "And what, pray tell, does that have to do with today's custody hearing?" Lily didn't flinch. She stood her ground, her small fingers tightening around the paper as she unfolded it. "It has everything to do with it," she said firmly. Her brown eyes, wide and earnest, scanned the room, making sure everyone was listening. "Because my mom is strong and brave and disciplined. She knows how to protect me, and she knows how to make good choices." She glanced down at her paper, then back up at the judge. "She saved people's lives. She teaches me how to be responsible. She's my mom, and she's amazing." The courtroom had begun to shift from casual amusement to curiosity. The bailiff, a burly man with a stern expression, tilted his head, listening more intently. The judge cleared his throat, trying to maintain authority, though a faint smile lingered. "Young lady," he said slowly, "I admire your enthusiasm, but are you aware that the courtroom is not a place for storytelling or fantasy?" Lily nodded solemnly, as if anticipating that remark. "I know, sir," she replied, "but I'm not making it up. I can tell you everything about my mom, how she trained, what she does, and how she makes sure I'm safe. Please, I want you to understand her, and I want you to know she's the best mom for me." At that moment, the judge's smile faltered. He noticed something in Lily's demeanor, an unwavering confidence that did not belong to a typical child of her age. There was no hesitation, no embellishment in her voice. The way she stood, shoulders squared, speaking with clarity beyond her years, made the gallery fall silent. Lawyers shifted in their seats. Reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks. The air, once light with curiosity, had become thick with intrigue. Lily took a small breath and began to narrate what she knew. "My mom wakes up before sunrise every day, even on weekends," she began. "She runs drills. She teaches me survival skills, and she helps me practice swimming and climbing. She always says discipline keeps us alive, and courage keeps us moving forward. I've seen her train with other people, real Navy SEALs, and she's always the one leading. She's taught me how to face fear and make quick decisions. And even though she's strong and tough, she's always there for me. She knows exactly what I need, and she's never let anything bad happen to me." There was a murmur in the courtroom. Even the judge leaned forward slightly, intrigued despite himself. He was used to children speaking in vague, idealized terms about parents. This was different. Lily's words painted a vivid picture of a life that seemed almost cinematic, yet she spoke with precise clarity and sincerity that left no doubt in her tone. The opposing attorney, who had expected an easy, perfunctory day in court, raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me, young lady," he said cautiously. "Are you suggesting that your mother's military service directly qualifies her to have custody of you?" "Yes," Lily replied without hesitation. "Because being a SEAL means she's responsible, careful, and brave. And all those things make her a good mom. I've seen her make tough choices every day, and she always does what's right. She's not just protecting me from danger. I've learned from her how to be strong and smart. She's my mom, and she's perfect for me." A silence fell over the room. The judge adjusted his glasses, as if reading her words a second time. The laughter that had bubbled up at the beginning was gone. Lily's small frame seemed impossibly large in that moment, as though the courtroom itself had been shaped by her conviction. The spectators, some leaning forward in their seats, listened with rapt attention. The judge's mind raced. He had seen many custody hearings. Most involved logistical debates, minor conflicts, and emotional testimony. Rarely had he encountered a child who spoke with such clarity about parenting and capability. Rarely had he witnessed anyone, adult or child, convey such a vivid sense of what it meant to protect and nurture a family, all while describing feats that seemed pulled from action novels. Lily noticed the shift in mood, but did not waver. She continued, describing how her mother had taken her on mock missions in the backyard, teaching her how to stay calm under pressure. She described exercises to strengthen her mind and body, lessons in decision-making, and ways to handle fear responsibly. "Mom says courage isn't the absence of fear," Lily explained, "but knowing what to do even when you're scared. She shows me every day." By now, the judge was fully attentive. Even the skeptical reporters and attorneys in the room felt a stirring of admiration. There was a story unfolding that no one had expected, a story that blurred the lines between ordinary life and extraordinary heroism. Lily, small but formidable, had captured their attention completely. The judge cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Young lady, I must admit, I did not expect such a detailed account. Most children—" He stopped, glancing at her, recognizing that she was no ordinary child. "You may continue," he said finally, his tone now laced with genuine curiosity rather than amusement. Lily smiled faintly and began to speak about the camaraderie she had witnessed among her mother's team, about the respect they all had for one another, and about the lessons she had learned from observing leadership in action. Her voice was steady, her words precise, and her passion evident. She had transformed the courtroom from a place of casual amusement into a stage for truth and courage. As the session continued, it became clear that what Lily had come to say was not a whimsical exaggeration, but a remarkable account of parenting through strength, service, and discipline. Every word drew the audience deeper into a story that would soon unfold in ways no one expected. By the end of the morning, the laughter of the judge and the murmurs of amusement had vanished entirely. The courtroom was silent, the air heavy with anticipation, as everyone realized that this small girl was about to change their perception of her mother, and perhaps of bravery and motherhood itself forever. The day outside the courthouse was warm, with the sun drifting lazily across a clear blue sky, but inside, the tension from the morning's events lingered like a heavy curtain. Even as the hearing progressed, the courtroom's attention remained focused on the small, determined girl who had already shifted the perception of everyone present. But the story wasn't complete. It couldn't be understood fully without knowing the woman behind the claims. Lily's mother, Commander Sarah Blake. Sarah's life was one of extraordinary duality, a careful balance between the unimaginable intensity of military operations and the quiet routines of domestic life. On the surface, she appeared unremarkable to the casual observer, a friendly neighbor, always ready to volunteer at the local school or coach the occasional youth sports team. She smiled easily, spoke with warmth, and had a natural way of making everyone feel at ease. Her demeanor concealed, however, a life few could imagine: the grueling discipline, the relentless physical training, and the high-stakes missions that defined her career as a Navy SEAL. From the moment Lily was born, Sarah had approached motherhood with the same intensity and focus that she applied to every mission. Unlike many parents, she never underestimated her child's ability to understand the world, to absorb lessons, or to rise to challenges. She taught Lily that bravery wasn't measured by the absence of fear, but by the ability to act thoughtfully despite it. Courage isn't being fearless, Sarah would say, holding Lily's small hands while demonstrating an unfamiliar knot. It's knowing what to do when fear tries to stop you. Lily had absorbed these lessons like a sponge. She spoke often of mornings when the sun had barely touched the horizon, and her mother was already awake, running drills or performing exercises with precision and intensity. Sarah never forced these routines on Lily, but she invited her daughter to observe, to participate where appropriate, and to understand the discipline that shaped her life. Swimming laps, running obstacle courses, and practicing emergency drills had become part of Lily's upbringing, not as games, but as formative experiences designed to instill resilience, quick thinking, and courage. What made this upbringing remarkable was its seamless integration with genuine maternal care. Sarah never allowed the rigor of her military training to overshadow the softer, nurturing aspects of parenting. She listened attentively to Lily's questions, celebrated her achievements, and comforted her when she faltered. The discipline of a SEAL and the compassion of a mother existed in tandem, creating a household that was both structured and loving. Neighbors might have seen quiet afternoons filled with reading, homework, and simple baking projects, unaware that behind those calm scenes was a woman whose life had been defined by danger, strategy, and sacrifice. Despite her dedication, Sarah had always kept her SEAL career largely private. Lily was one of the few who understood the full scope of her mother's life. To friends, Sarah was merely a supportive parent and model citizen. To Lily, she was a hero in the truest sense, a figure who taught lessons that no book or classroom could provide, who embodied the values of courage, integrity, and resilience. It was this hidden reality that made Lily's courtroom testimony both compelling and unprecedented. From an early age, Lily had been fascinated not only by her mother's stories of courage, but also by the quiet moments that defined the family's resilience. She remembered evenings when Sarah returned from deployments, exhausted yet radiant, greeting her with hugs that spoke louder than words. The military world was full of discipline and secrecy, yet Sarah always carved out space for connection and love. Lily understood that strength was not just physical. It was moral, emotional, and relational. Sarah's training had also instilled a profound sense of responsibility. In every mission, mistakes could be fatal. In parenting, lapses could have lasting effects. Lily witnessed this dedication firsthand. She described how her mother carefully planned even simple outings, ensuring safety while allowing exploration. Each decision was deliberate, each lesson intentional. To outsiders, these actions might have seemed overly meticulous, but to Lily, they were evidence of a mother's love expressed through precision and care. The SEALs who worked alongside Sarah also noticed her unique approach to leadership. While they trained for high-stakes missions, Sarah's mentoring extended beyond operational tactics. She emphasized teamwork, observation, and ethical decision-making. These same principles she applied at home, teaching Lily the importance of integrity, empathy, and perseverance. The lessons of the battlefield, adapted for the domestic sphere, shaped Lily into a child who spoke with clarity, conviction, and maturity far beyond her years. Sarah's dual life had not been without sacrifice. Long periods away, rigorous schedules, and the inherent danger of her assignments created challenges that few could imagine. Yet she never allowed these challenges to define her relationship with Lily. Through letters, phone calls, and careful planning, she maintained a strong presence, ensuring her daughter understood that love and commitment transcended distance and circumstance. Lily's respect for her mother stemmed not only from admiration for her courage, but also from recognition of the sacrifices she had made to ensure a stable, loving home. The courtroom, once filled with casual skepticism, began to grasp the depth of this relationship. Each word Lily spoke reflected years of observation, trust, and love. Her testimony about swimming drills, emergency preparedness exercises, and lessons in discipline suddenly gained weight, no longer just an amusing anecdote, but a window into a life shaped by extraordinary resilience. The skeptics in the room could no longer dismiss her claims. The story was too precise, too consistent, and too compelling to be fiction. As Lily continued to speak, the gallery watched her with growing respect. She described the way her mother's SEAL team moved with precision, how Sarah led with calm authority, and how those lessons in leadership and courage filtered down into the household. "She taught me that mistakes aren't failures," Lily explained, "but opportunities to learn and do better. She shows me how to be brave, even when I'm scared, and how to think carefully before acting. She's my mom, and she's taught me everything important about life." Even Judge Harris, who had begun the day with laughter, felt the shift in gravity. The courtroom was no longer a casual venue for a custody dispute. It had transformed into a space of reverence, witnessing the rare intersection of childhood innocence and extraordinary truth. He realized that Lily's insights were born from direct experience, from observation of someone who embodied the values of courage, discipline, and love in every aspect of life. The opposing attorney, initially dismissive, leaned forward in disbelief. He had anticipated simple claims about schedules and childcare, not testimony about leadership, heroism, and resilience. He watched as Lily described exercises that mirrored the training of elite military units, adapted for a child's understanding. She spoke of running through obstacle courses in the backyard, learning how to assess risks, and understanding the importance of preparation and calm under pressure. Every detail lent credibility to her account, bridging the gap between the extraordinary and the everyday. By the end of the morning session, the narrative of Sarah Blake's life had begun to unfold in vivid detail, painting a portrait that went far beyond the courtroom. It was a story of dual identities, the ordinary neighbor and the elite warrior, the disciplined leader and the nurturing mother. Lily's words had begun to bridge these worlds, allowing those present to glimpse the depth of her mother's influence and the strength of their relationship. And through it all, Lily's own courage shone brightly. She had stood in front of a room full of adults, unafraid and resolute, speaking truths that most children could never comprehend. Her testimony had started as a simple declaration, "My mom is a Navy SEAL," but by the end of the session, it had transformed into a profound lesson on resilience, dedication, and love, the kind that commands respect, even from a skeptical judge. Outside the courthouse, whispers began to circulate. The story was unusual, compelling, and entirely real. And inside, the courtroom awaited the next act, unaware that Lily's honesty and insight had already begun to change the course of the hearing and the perception of her mother forever. The morning sunlight had shifted, falling more sharply through the courthouse windows, casting long patterns on the polished wooden floor. The gallery remained tense, the air thick with anticipation. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next chapter of Lily's revelation. The judge had listened in silence, fascinated despite himself. Lawyers shifted uneasily in their chairs, unsure how to respond to the extraordinary claims of a 10-year-old child. The custody hearing, which had begun as a routine legal procedure, had transformed into something entirely different. What should have been a debate over visitation schedules, routines, and parental responsibilities had evolved into an inquiry into the extraordinary life of Commander Sarah Blake and the impact of her work on her daughter. Lily's father, a man used to routine court proceedings, sat rigid in his chair, disbelief etched across his face. He had anticipated a simple hearing, expecting to present evidence of his wife's long absences or dangerous lifestyle. Instead, he was faced with an account from his daughter, so precise and vivid, it left him unsure what to argue next. "Are you suggesting," he finally said, voice tight, "that her military career somehow qualifies her to have custody? That the danger inherent in her work somehow makes her a better parent?" The question, rhetorical as it was, hung in the air like a challenge. His lawyer nodded nervously, aware that the courtroom had shifted from the familiar territory of minor disputes to something unprecedented. Lily did not flinch. She straightened, her small frame radiating a maturity far beyond her years. "Yes," she said, her voice calm and steady, "because being a Navy SEAL means she's disciplined. She makes good choices. She knows how to protect me. And she teaches me how to be strong and brave." Her words were precise, almost rehearsed, yet carried the authenticity of lived experience. "I've seen her train with other SEALs. She's always the leader, and she's never let anyone down, including me." The judge leaned forward in his chair, removing his glasses to rub his eyes. He had seen children exaggerate, embellish, and fabricate stories to impress. But Lily's testimony was different. Her account was detailed, specific, and consistent. She spoke not in fantastical terms, but in precise observations of behavior, routines, and lessons learned. She described the drills, the problem-solving exercises, and even the physical challenges she had witnessed with her mother, all adapted to be age-appropriate, yet undeniably reflective of the parent's capability and character. The opposing attorney shifted in his seat, clearly struggling to reconcile the child's testimony with the typical narrative of parental fitness. "Miss Blake," he said cautiously, addressing Lily indirectly about her mother, "are you claiming that observing drills and exercises is somehow enough to ensure you are safe? That these activities make her the right choice for custody?" "Yes," Lily replied firmly. "Because she's not just training herself, she's teaching me, guiding me. She's teaching me how to make good choices, how to stay calm, and how to act when something goes wrong. I've learned more from her than anyone else. And she's always careful. She makes sure I'm safe while learning these things. She's brave, and she's smart, and she's my mom." The courtroom shifted again. Some in the gallery were whispering, leaning toward each other, realizing that the child's story was far more than a fanciful imagination. Her father looked increasingly uneasy, realizing that his daughter's observations, while extraordinary, could not easily be dismissed. He had expected complaints about absences or risks, but instead he was confronted with clear evidence of competence, foresight, and moral integrity qualities he had underestimated in both his daughter and wife. Judge Harris cleared his throat. "Young lady, most children would be frightened to stand here and speak so openly," he said, his voice measured. "Yet you speak with confidence and detail. How do you know so much about your mother's abilities?" Lily paused for a moment, glancing at the gallery, then directly at her mother, seated calmly in the back. "Because I live it," she said simply. "I've seen it. I've watched her handle hard situations, make tough decisions, and lead people who are stronger and older than me. She doesn't just tell me what to do, she shows me, step by step. I know she can handle anything, and that makes her the best mom I could have." Her words, simple yet potent, began to reshape the courtroom's perception of the case. The initial amusement and skepticism had given way to something more profound: awe. Observers could now see the link between Sarah Blake's professional competence and her effectiveness as a parent. Lily's insight illuminated not just her mother's strength, but the child's own development in response to a nurturing, disciplined environment. The father's lawyer tried to interject, citing standard concerns about the dangers of military life and prolonged absences. Miss Blake's work takes her to perilous locations, sometimes for weeks at a time. How can she be present for her child's daily needs? He argued. Lily tilted her head, speaking with clarity that left the courtroom silent. She makes it work. She plans everything. She calls me, she writes to me, and she makes sure I'm safe. She doesn't just leave me alone. And when she's home, she's there. I've learned to handle small challenges because she teaches me step by step. That's what makes her a good mom. The judge exchanged a glance with the courtroom clerk, silently acknowledging that this was no ordinary testimony. Lily had presented a picture of parenting that went beyond presence or schedule one of preparation, mentorship, and intentional guidance. In her words, custody was not merely a question of availability, but of capability, integrity, and influence. As Lily continued, she recounted specific lessons, how her mother had taught her to react calmly during emergencies, how to solve problems under pressure, and even how to observe others and make strategic decisions. Each example reinforced her central claim. Her mother's military training directly contributed to her ability to provide a safe, loving, and instructive environment. The courtroom hung on every word, realizing that this was not a boastful child, but a witness describing first-hand evidence. Even the father, previously confident in his objections, began to shift uneasily. The facts as recounted by his own daughter undermined his argument. Sarah Blake's competence and care were no longer abstract. They were documented in the child's daily experiences. The courtroom, once poised for routine deliberation, had become a space of revelation, where every observer confronted the extraordinary truth hidden behind an unassuming suburban exterior. Lily paused, then spoke of her mother's team, the SEALs. She described how they operated, how her mother led them, and how she had learned leadership, responsibility, and ethics from observing these adults. "I see how she makes tough choices," Lily said, "and how she stays calm when others are scared. I know she can handle hard situations because I've seen it. I trust her completely." The judge, scribbling notes furiously, recognized the weight of these statements. This was more than a custody hearing. It was a testimony about character, preparation, and moral guidance. Lily's insights were not abstract. They were grounded in lived experience, observation, and the lessons of extraordinary circumstances. By the time the morning session ended, the courtroom's atmosphere had shifted completely. The initial laughter, the casual skepticism, and the easy assumptions had vanished. Everyone present recognized that this case was no longer about standard custody considerations. It was about understanding what it truly meant to parent with courage, foresight, and integrity. Lily's testimony had reframed the narrative entirely, preparing the stage for a dramatic turn that no one could yet anticipate. Outside the courtroom, whispers began circulating. Journalists, lawyers, and spectators alike were captivated. The story of Lily and her extraordinary mother was beginning to reach beyond the walls of the courthouse, hinting at something remarkable. A young girl whose courage, insight, and honesty had begun to challenge assumptions, redefine expectations, and illuminate the extraordinary life of a parent previously hidden in plain sight. Inside, Judge Harris leaned back, rubbing his temples. He had started the morning expecting routine procedure, but found himself witnessing something far more complex and compelling. He realized that the decision he was about to make would not be simple, not because of law alone, but because the human story before him was extraordinary, layered, and deeply moving. As Lily gathered her papers, ready to leave the witness stand for a brief recess, the entire courtroom felt a collective anticipation. The next steps, the presentation of additional evidence, and the unfolding drama promised revelations that would challenge even the most skeptical observers. Lily had opened the door to the truth, and the audience, both in the courtroom and beyond, was about to step through it alongside her. The courtroom had settled into an almost reverent silence. The initial shock of Lily's testimony had given way to a growing sense of gravity among everyone present. Judge Harris leaned forward, elbows resting on the bench, as if bracing himself for the next wave of truth. This was no longer a routine custody hearing. It had transformed into a rare intersection of courage, family, and extraordinary experience. Every word Lily spoke now carried more weight than the judge had ever imagined possible. Lily's small hands gripped her folded papers once more, though she no longer glanced down at them. Her voice had gained strength, conviction threading through each syllable. "My mom teaches me more than anyone else could," she said. "I've learned to pay attention, to stay calm, and to solve problems quickly. She shows me how to be brave, even when I'm scared, and how to think before I act. I know that sounds like a lot for a 10-year-old, but I understand it because I see her do it every day." The judge raised an eyebrow, intrigued. There was a clarity in her words that demanded attention. Lily went on, describing a specific example that left the room on edge. "One time," she began, "we were on a hike near the river. I slipped on a rock, and I was scared. But Mom told me to breathe, think, and move carefully. She helped me back to safety, showing me step by step how to stay balanced and calm. That's how she teaches me to face challenges. She never lets fear control me." The courtroom, already tense, leaned forward. Parents, lawyers, and onlookers alike could feel the sincerity in her voice. Lily wasn't embellishing. She was recounting real experiences that highlighted her mother's effectiveness as both a parent and a leader. Even the opposing attorney found himself swallowing hard, realizing that dismissing these claims would be increasingly difficult. Lily continued, now turning her attention to her mother's SEAL team. "I've seen her work with the other SEALs," she said. "She leads them, even when the situations are hard. She has to make decisions that affect everyone's safety, and she does it carefully, calmly, and wisely. Watching her has taught me responsibility, patience, and courage. I know she can handle anything, and that makes me feel safe." Her words had a magnetic effect. The judge, who had started the morning chuckling at what he assumed would be a child's fantasy, now sat silent, absorbing each detail. Lily had bridged the gap between storytelling and reality, and in doing so, she had transformed the courtroom's perception of her mother. The audience felt it too, a shift from skepticism to deep respect. The opposing attorney cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Miss Lily, while your observations are detailed, don't you think your mother's work could put you in danger?" Lily shook her head firmly. "No, she plans everything carefully. She never puts me in real danger. She makes sure I'm safe while teaching me important things. She shows me how to be brave, not reckless. I know she's always thinking about me." There was a murmur in the gallery, the audience absorbing the depth of her understanding. It was rare to see a child speak so confidently about life, safety, and responsibility. Every word reinforced the undeniable fact that Sarah Blake's professional skills translated directly into extraordinary parenting. Lily's testimony then took a personal turn. She described how her mother had taught her about teamwork, ethics, and making tough decisions. "Mom says that leadership isn't about being the strongest or the loudest," Lily explained. "It's about helping people, making the right choices, and staying calm when things get hard. I see her do that with the SEALs, and she does the same with me. I know she's the best mom because she shows me every day how to be strong and kind at the same time." The courtroom was captivated. It was clear to everyone present that this was no ordinary custody debate. Lily's words highlighted a unique parenting style, one that combined discipline, empathy, courage, and foresight. She described how these lessons shaped her confidence, her ability to solve problems, and her understanding of morality. She had learned from her mother not only how to survive in dangerous situations, but also how to thrive, think critically, and act responsibly in everyday life. Even Judge Harris, who prided himself on impartiality, felt his skepticism melt away. The child's clarity, precision, and insight were undeniable. He could see that her upbringing had cultivated not only resilience, but also wisdom far beyond her years. The judge scribbled notes furiously, knowing that the testimony he was witnessing would weigh heavily in his final decision. Then Lily dropped another bombshell, one that would mark the true turning point of the hearing. "My mom told me today that she wants to come to court," she said, eyes shining. "She wants to show you who she is. She wants you to meet her team, too. I promised her I'd speak first, and now I have. Please, wait until you see her. You won't believe it until you do." A ripple of astonishment moved through the room. A gallery leaned forward, and even the lawyers exchanged uneasy glances. The judge, trying to maintain composure, felt a mix of curiosity and apprehension. He had anticipated a mother-child custody case, not a revelation that promised to reshape the entire courtroom experience. Lily's father's face turned pale. He had expected to argue for custody based on perceived risk and absence, but now he faced the possibility of direct confrontation with evidence he could not challenge. The mother herself and the highly trained SEAL team backing her. His carefully constructed arguments suddenly seemed fragile, inadequate, and irrelevant. Lily continued to describe the character of her mother in personal terms. "Mom is not just brave in dangerous situations," she said. "She's brave in everyday life, too. She stands up for what's right, she cares for everyone, and she never gives up. I've seen her comfort people who are scared, teach people who are struggling, and always stay calm when things are hard. That's why she's my hero. That's why she's the best mom for me." The judge, now fully attentive, felt a shift in his own perspective. He realized that he had underestimated the child's ability to perceive the truth, and underestimated the mother's extraordinary balance of discipline, care, and courage. Lily's words were no longer just testimony. They were evidence of a life shaped by integrity, preparation, and love. Then came the moment of suspense. The courtroom doors opened. A hush fell over the room as a group of figures entered, each moving with quiet precision. The crowd watched in disbelief. They were not the casual visitors anyone had expected. They were tall, imposing, and uniformed. The Navy SEALs, part of Sarah Blake's team, filed into the back of the courtroom with disciplined steps. And finally, Commander Sarah Blake herself entered. Calm, confident, and radiating authority, she walked past the stunned audience to stand behind Lily. The judge froze mid-sentence, the laughter he had mustered that morning entirely gone. He looked at the child, then at the woman, then at the team of elite military professionals who had followed her. Reality had arrived. The room held its collective breath. The gallery, previously buzzing with speculation and skepticism, was now silent, transformed by the undeniable presence of the mother and her team. The opposing attorney opened his mouth, closed it again, and slowly sat back in his chair, realizing that this case had just taken a turn none could have predicted. Lily beamed at her mother, pride and relief shining in her eyes. Her testimony had paved the way for this moment, turning skepticism into awe. The courtroom, once light-hearted and dismissive, had now become a stage for recognition, respect, and an extraordinary revelation about courage, parenting, and the bond between mother and daughter. Judge Harris, struggling to regain composure, scribbled notes furiously, aware that the rest of the hearing would be unlike anything he had ever presided over. The case had shifted irrevocably from a legal dispute to a profound testament of bravery, preparation, and love, the kind of testimony that left no room for doubt and no space for humor. In that instant, the turning point had been reached. The courtroom had been transformed. What began as a small girl's bold declaration had blossomed into a living, breathing demonstration of competence, courage, and maternal love. Every observer understood that the rest of the hearing would now unfold under the weight of this revelation, where the extraordinary had finally been made visible, undeniable, and real. The courtroom had fallen into an unusual, almost sacred silence. Every pair of eyes was fixed on the doors at the far end, now slightly ajar. Whispers ceased, and even the faint shuffling of feet in the gallery seemed muffled, as though the room itself anticipated the arrival of someone or something extraordinary. The tension was electric. No one spoke. Then, without fanfare or dramatic flourish, the doors opened fully. A group of figures entered, moving with disciplined precision. Their presence commanded attention without a word. Tall, imposing, uniformed, they exuded authority. Yet there was a quiet respect in their movements, a controlled power that immediately set the entire courtroom on edge. It was the unmistakable bearing of Navy SEALs, elite warriors trained to operate under extreme pressure, every muscle and gesture purposeful. Lily's mother, Commander Sarah Blake, walked behind them, calm yet radiating an aura of quiet strength. She was tall and fit, her uniform immaculate, her posture perfect. Every step was measured, deliberate, the kind of walk that conveyed both confidence and authority. Her presence instantly drew the attention of the judge, the lawyers, and the audience alike. The room, which had only minutes earlier been filled with murmurs of doubt and amusement, became utterly still. Judge Harris, who had begun the morning chuckling at Lily's bold claim, now sat frozen, jaw slack, eyes wide. The humor that had marked the start of the hearing had vanished completely. In its place was an almost reverential awe. He blinked several times, trying to process what he was seeing. Every instinct, every assumption he had carried about this case had just been upended. This was no longer a custody hearing in the usual sense. It was now a spectacle of undeniable reality. Sarah's gaze fell briefly on her daughter, and Lily's small face lit up with pride. Her testimony, full of courage and clarity, had set the stage for this moment. She had spoken the truth, and now the evidence had arrived not just in words, but in the form of a highly trained team and a mother who embodied everything she had described. The courtroom understood instantly. Lily had been honest, and what she had said was not only plausible, it was real. The SEALs filed quietly to the back of the courtroom, standing in formation. Their movements were synchronized, almost choreographed, yet natural. Each man and woman radiated physical power, discipline, and unwavering focus. They were the living proof of the environment Lily had described, people capable of extraordinary feats, operating under extreme pressure, led by the woman seated behind them. The contrast was striking. Ordinary faces and bodies had entered the courtroom earlier that morning, expecting routine proceedings. Now, they were confronted with a team whose mere presence altered the gravity of the space. Even the gallery, previously buzzing with curiosity and mild skepticism, sat in awe. Reporters stopped writing, witnesses held their breath, and attorneys stared with mouths slightly agape. The sight of Commander Sarah Blake, flanked by elite SEALs, made clear that Lily's words were not fanciful tales, but precise reflections of an extraordinary life. Her father's confident posture began to falter. Arguments he had prepared about perceived risk, absence, and danger suddenly seemed insignificant. The evidence of competence, preparation, and care now stood before him, living and undeniable. Sarah approached the witness area, moving with the same calm authority she displayed in the field. Her eyes scanned the room briefly, landing on Judge Harris. He was blinking rapidly, trying to collect himself, clearly struggling to maintain his authority in the face of what could only be described as overwhelming reality. Sarah's calm, measured presence was in stark contrast to the chaos of disbelief around her. She radiated focus, control, and an unmistakable air of command. As she reached her daughter, Lily ran forward, embracing her mother tightly. The judge, for the first time, realized that this was not just a story about military capability. It was a testament to love, care, and the bond between mother and child. The embrace was brief but powerful, a tangible illustration of the trust and connection that Lily had described so eloquently. It was clear to all present that this bond was genuine and profound. The SEAL team, now settled in formation at the back of the courtroom, nodded subtly at Lily and Sarah. Their movements were understated, but each gesture conveyed support, respect, and validation. It was a silent acknowledgement that the young girl had told the truth, that her mother's integrity and skill were beyond question. The courtroom was silent, but the energy was palpable, a mixture of awe, respect, and the faintest hint of intimidation. Judge Harris cleared his throat, attempting to regain composure. "Commander Blake," he said, voice measured but tinged with astonishment, "I admit, I did not expect this." He gestured vaguely toward the SEALs. "Nor did I anticipate the scale of evidence presented by your daughter's testimony." He paused, scanning the room, realizing that the traditional formality of a custody hearing could no longer contain the extraordinary reality before him. Sarah nodded slightly, her expression calm yet authoritative. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear and steady, "Lily spoke honestly about her experiences. She understands the care, responsibility, and discipline I provide. I am here to demonstrate that what she described is accurate, and that my parental approach is deliberate, attentive, and grounded in both love and preparation." The courtroom felt the weight of her words. They were simple, yet undeniable in their authority. Every observer, from reporters to lawyers to the judge himself, understood that what had begun as a child's bold claim had become an incontrovertible demonstration of truth. Sarah Blake's presence was living evidence, reinforcing every detail Lily had shared. Even Lily's father seemed momentarily speechless. He had anticipated a routine hearing, believing he could argue successfully that his wife's military career rendered her unfit for daily parenting responsibilities. Now, faced with the physical presence of Sarah and her team, the meticulously described evidence of training, and the unwavering confidence of his daughter, he felt the foundation of his argument crumble. He realized that credibility, preparation, and lived experience were far more persuasive than legal rhetoric alone. Lily stepped back slightly, holding her mother's hand, and began to explain more details of her experiences. "I've seen Mom lead her team," she said, her eyes scanning the SEALs behind her. "She makes sure everyone is safe, and she teaches me how to make decisions carefully. I've learned from her how to stay calm when things are hard, how to think before acting, and how to help others when they need it. She's brave and she's careful, and she's my mom." The judge's face, previously frozen in disbelief, now reflected careful consideration. He realized that this entrance, this living demonstration, had fundamentally shifted the trajectory of the case. The courtroom's focus had moved from abstract arguments about schedules and perceived risk to an undeniable observation of capability, character, and care. Sarah Blake was not only a SEAL, but a parent whose discipline, experience, and love directly shaped her child's safety and development. The SEAL team remained silent, yet their presence reinforced the narrative. Their disciplined posture, silent acknowledgement, and subtle nods spoke volumes. Lily had described the truth. Sarah's skills and leadership were irrefutable. Every observer understood that these were individuals trained to the highest standards, and they recognized their commander not merely as a leader, but as a parent whose principles extended naturally into her home life. Judge Harris exhaled slowly, trying to gather his thoughts. The courtroom, once filled with whispers and skepticism, now held an almost reverential silence. He understood that the next steps of the hearing would be conducted under a new reality, one in which a 10-year-old's truth had been validated by the undeniable presence of extraordinary competence and discipline. The opposing attorney, eyes wide, tried to speak, but faltered. Every argument about perceived danger or absence seemed diminished in comparison to the living, breathing reality before him. The room had transformed from a conventional legal proceeding into a showcase of human resilience, integrity, and parental care. Every observer felt it, the extraordinary intersection of bravery, preparation, and love, brought vividly to life in that quiet courtroom. Lily looked up at her mother once more, her eyes shining. "I told you, didn't I?" she whispered softly. Sarah smiled, squeezing her hand. It was a moment that needed no words beyond the embrace, a quiet acknowledgement of trust and the validation of years of careful preparation. The audience, though silent, felt the magnitude of the connection. Judge Harris adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. "Commander Blake," he said, voice steady now, "I will hear the rest of the case with full awareness of the extraordinary circumstances you've presented. It appears that what your daughter described is not only true, but profoundly illustrative of your capabilities and dedication." The courtroom exhaled as the formal proceedings resumed. But the atmosphere had changed irrevocably. Laughter was gone. Skepticism had vanished. In its place was a quiet, palpable respect for the mother, for her team, and for the remarkable young girl whose honesty and courage had transformed the entire hearing. In that moment, the turning point was complete. What began as a child's bold claim had grown into a living demonstration of excellence, preparation, and parental love. Every observer understood that the remainder of the hearing would unfold under the weight of undeniable truth, where courage, discipline, and integrity had already spoken louder than any argument, legal or otherwise. The moment Commander Sarah Blake stepped into the courtroom, Judge Harris felt a weight settle on his shoulders, a mixture of disbelief, awe, and an unexpected sense of responsibility. He had started the day with a casual smile, prepared for a routine custody hearing. By mid-morning, the laughter had faded, replaced by growing curiosity. And now, with the elite SEAL team silently positioned behind her, the judge understood that nothing about this case was ordinary. He adjusted his glasses, attempting to regain composure, but the effort felt futile. Every instinct he had relied upon as a jurist to procedural predictability, the expectation of testimony confined to mundane details, was suddenly irrelevant. The courtroom had transformed from a place of formal debate into a theater of truth, courage, and lived experience. Judge Harris studied Sarah Blake carefully. She was calm, confident, and composed, yet every movement conveyed authority and focus. This was no performance, he realized. It was the natural presence of a woman who had trained, disciplined, and led in the most extreme circumstances imaginable. The SEALs behind her reinforced the reality. These were not actors, and this was not exaggeration. Lily's testimony had been entirely accurate. He reflected on the girl's words. Lily had described her mother's routines, her training, and her leadership with precision. She had spoken of discipline, courage, problem-solving, and ethical guidance. She had done so not to impress, but from direct observation and lived experience. The judge could see it now, the quiet authority that Sarah Blake carried, mirrored in the respect of her team and in the certainty of her daughter. A subtle tension ran through him. As a judge, he was trained to weigh evidence and assess credibility, to balance competing claims and arrive at reasoned judgments. Yet here, the usual tools felt inadequate. How could he challenge or doubt testimony that had been confirmed not only by a child's honesty, but by the living presence of elite professionals trained to the highest standard of excellence? He recalled the early part of the morning, when he had laughed at Lily's declaration. A small, seemingly innocent comment about her mother being a Navy SEAL had seemed amusing, even charming. That laugh now felt foolish, almost naive. The courtroom's transformation reminded him that appearances can be deceptive and that truth often lies hidden beneath layers of ordinary life. Judge Harris shifted in his seat, taking a deep breath. He had to remind himself to separate the extraordinary circumstances from his role in the courtroom. The law required impartiality, objectivity, and fairness. Yet he also had to acknowledge reality. Lily's testimony, now reinforced by her mother's presence and the SEAL team, had fundamentally altered the narrative. He could no longer see Sarah Blake as merely a parent absent for work. She was a parent whose life skills, courage, and integrity directly translated into capable and protective parenting. He glanced at the opposing attorney, who appeared both stunned and frustrated. Every objection, every prepared argument about perceived risk or absence had lost weight. The courtroom had shifted from hypothetical debate to irrefutable demonstration. The judge realized that he had a duty not just to follow procedure, but to recognize the profound truth unfolding before him. The gallery remained silent, hanging on the tension emanating from the bench. Judge Harris's mind raced. He considered Lily's upbringing, the consistency of her observations, and the clarity of her testimony. The child had spoken not from imagination, but from experience. Each detail was precise: the swimming drills, the problem-solving exercises, the lessons in bravery and ethics. This was not fantasy. It was evidence of real, intentional, and effective parenting. He thought further about the nature of courage. In his own life, he had observed adults who claimed bravery. But here was a mother who lived it daily, modeled it, and instilled it in her child. Her life was a testament to discipline, preparation, and care. Lily's admiration for her mother was not naive. It was informed, accurate, and profound. The judge considered the implications for the custody decision. Standard criteria availability, routine, and daily presence were insufficient measures for this case. He now understood that parenting could be defined in multiple dimensions, including preparation, resilience, and moral guidance. Sarah Blake's dual life had not diminished her ability to parent. It had enhanced it. Her military discipline had become a foundation for extraordinary care and protection. He observed Sarah subtly interacting with Lily. The mother's calm confidence, coupled with attentiveness to her daughter's needs, illustrated a dynamic that reinforced every claim the child had made. There was no overbearing rigidity, no cold militarism, only measured guidance, care, and attentiveness. The judge realized that Sarah Blake's presence in the courtroom was not just proof of her capabilities. It was a live demonstration of the maternal qualities Lily had described in precise detail. Judge Harris's mind returned to Lily's testimony about leadership. The girl had described her mother instructing others, assessing risk, and making quick, ethical decisions. Those same skills were now observable in how she carried herself in the courtroom. Her movements calm but decisive, her gaze firm but compassionate. The judge realized that Lily's words had anticipated reality. She had captured her mother's essence, and now he was seeing it firsthand. A part of him felt a quiet admiration for the child as well. 10 years old and already capable of articulating observations with clarity and precision far beyond her years. Lily had spoken with honesty, courage, and authority. Her insight had forced the courtroom, including the judge himself, to confront truth in a way that left no room for dismissal. Judge Harris cleared his throat, finally breaking the silence. "Commander Blake," he said, carefully measuring his tone, "it is apparent that your child has spoken accurately about your abilities, discipline, and parenting. I must acknowledge that the testimony I have heard, coupled with your presence here and the corroboration of your team, has profoundly impacted my understanding of this case." He paused, glancing at the SEALs behind her. Their presence silently reinforced every word he had just spoken. The judge realized that the combination of lived experience, direct observation, and professional validation had created a powerful and irrefutable narrative. "The extraordinary circumstances of your life," he continued, "require me to consider factors beyond the usual metrics. Custody decisions are typically guided by presence, routine, and stability. However, in this case, I must also account for capability, preparedness, and the tangible guidance you provide to your child. A quiet murmur ran through the gallery. Judge Harris noticed that the spectators, previously captivated by spectacle, now listened intently to the judicial acknowledgment of what they had witnessed. The courtroom had moved from disbelief to recognition, from amusement to understanding, and now to a profound awareness of the mother's exceptional capabilities. Even Lily's father appeared to process the shift. His posture, once rigid with confidence, now reflected contemplation. The arguments he had prepared about absence, risk, and routine were now overshadowed by a reality that was difficult to dispute. Sarah Blake's parenting, informed by extraordinary discipline and courage, had created a child capable, confident, and articulate in the most precise and compelling manner. Judge Harris leaned back slightly, taking a measured breath. He realized that his decision-making process would have to incorporate more than precedent and standard evaluation. He would have to weigh lived experience, ethical guidance, courage, and resilience as demonstrated both in testimony and presence. He understood that dismissing this reality would be both legally and morally untenable. The judge finally allowed a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was not approval, yet but a recognition that the extraordinary truth before him had fundamentally altered the trajectory of the case. Every participant in the courtroom understood the significance. The mother, the child, the SEAL team, and even the legal authorities had collectively transformed the understanding of what constituted capable, extraordinary parenting. For the first time, Judge Harris felt the full weight of responsibility in this case, not merely as a legal arbitrator, but as an observer of courage, integrity, and extraordinary familial bonds. The courtroom had shifted irreversibly from skepticism to reverence, from routine procedure to recognition of human excellence. The evidence was living, undeniable, and profoundly moving. By the end of the morning, the judge sat in reflective silence. Lily had spoken with honesty, clarity, and courage. Sarah Blake had demonstrated authority, calm, and confidence. The SEAL team's presence had validated the narrative without a single word. Every preconceived notion had been challenged, every expectation reframed. The courtroom had experienced a turning point that left no room for doubt about the mother's capability, the child's insight, or the extraordinary nature of the case. Judge Harris knew that the remainder of the hearing would proceed under a new lens, one in which courage, discipline, and love had been made visible in a way that could not be ignored. The impact on his judgment, and indeed on everyone present, was profound, irreversible, and utterly compelling. The courtroom remained tense as Judge Harris reviewed his notes. The entire day had been unlike anything he had experienced in his years on the bench. What began as a routine custody hearing had transformed into a vivid demonstration of courage, discipline, and parental dedication. Every observer understood that this case was extraordinary, not just for the mother's accomplishments, but for the rare insight of her daughter, Lily, who had described a life few could imagine. The judge cleared his throat, bringing the room to a hushed anticipation. He looked first at Lily, sitting upright, eyes bright, hands folded neatly in her lap. Then he turned to Commander Sarah Blake, standing calmly, her SEAL team in disciplined formation behind her. Every eye in the courtroom was fixed on the bench as the judge began to speak. After careful consideration of all testimony and evidence presented, he said, his voice steady but deliberate, "It is apparent that this case involves extraordinary circumstances that go beyond standard custody considerations. The child's testimony, corroborated by the mother's presence and the expertise demonstrated, provides an exceptional insight into her upbringing and care." There was a pause. The gallery leaned forward, sensing the gravity of the moment. Sarah's father, previously confident and skeptical, sat rigid, unsure how to respond. Even the attorneys, long accustomed to controlling proceedings, were silent, waiting to hear how the judge would rule in a situation that defied normal precedent. Judge Harris continued, "It is evident that Commander Blake has demonstrated exceptional capability, not only in her professional life, but also in her role as a parent. Her discipline, attention to safety, ethical guidance, and ability to instill courage and problem-solving skills in her daughter are remarkable. These qualities directly impact the child's well-being, growth, and development." He paused again, allowing the words to settle. The courtroom was almost reverent. Lily's mother's quiet authority had left an indelible impression, and the judge's acknowledgment reinforced the extraordinary reality that the child had so clearly articulated. Furthermore, Judge Harris said, the child herself has exhibited remarkable insight and understanding of her environment. Lily Blake has provided clear, detailed, and honest testimony about her experiences, demonstrating comprehension and maturity beyond her years. She has clearly witnessed and benefited from the mother's guidance, discipline, and care. The father's lawyer opened his mouth, but the judge raised a hand, signaling that the ruling was about to be finalized. "Considering all factors," Judge Harris said, "it is my determination that custody shall remain with Commander Sarah Blake. This decision reflects the child's best interest, taking into account both her emotional well-being and the extraordinary capabilities demonstrated by the mother." A quiet gasp ran through the gallery. Sarah's mother's claim had been validated in the most emphatic way possible. Lily's eyes shone with relief and pride, and she leaned forward slightly to squeeze her mother's hand. Sarah gave a small, composed smile, acknowledging her daughter's courage and wisdom. The judge continued, addressing both parents. "This decision does not diminish the role of the other parent, who may participate in visitation and contribute to the child's life. However, it is clear that the primary custodial responsibility rests with the parent who has demonstrated both extraordinary competence and a nurturing, structured environment for the child." Even the SEAL team behind Sarah relaxed slightly, though their disciplined posture remained intact. The ruling had confirmed not only Sarah's capability as a parent, but also the accuracy and importance of Lily's testimony. Every member of the courtroom understood that this case had redefined the boundaries of conventional thinking about parenting, courage, and responsibility. Sarah's father, previously tense and rigid, now exhaled slowly. He looked at his daughter and then at his ex-wife, a mixture of respect and acknowledgement crossing his face. He realized that arguments about absence or perceived risk had been overshadowed by undeniable evidence of care, competence, and integrity. The extraordinary circumstances of this case left little room for conventional objections. Judge Harris glanced once more at Lily. "Young lady," he said gently, "your testimony has been both compelling and insightful. Your honesty and clarity have made a profound impact on this courtroom. You should be proud of yourself, as should your mother." Lily's small smile broke across her face. "Thank you, Your Honor," she said softly, her eyes shining with pride. She turned to her mother, who gave a reassuring nod. The bond between them, already extraordinary, was now publicly acknowledged and validated. The gallery erupted into quiet applause, a mixture of admiration and relief. Spectators recognized the uniqueness of the day's events: a child's courageous testimony, a mother's extraordinary entrance, and a team of elite professionals had converged to create an unforgettable moment of truth. Journalists scribbled furiously, eager to capture a story that went far beyond the usual courtroom drama. Sarah approached Lily, kneeling slightly to meet her daughter's gaze. "You were amazing," she said quietly, her voice calm but warm. "You told the truth and stood strong. I'm proud of you." Lily hugged her mother tightly, a mixture of joy, relief, and admiration passing between them. Judge Harris banged his gavel gently. "Court is adjourned," he said. The words felt almost secondary, a mere formality after the extraordinary proceedings that had just concluded. The courtroom slowly emptied, leaving a lingering sense of awe. Conversations that had started with skepticism now hummed with respect and wonder. Outside the courthouse, the press swarmed. Cameras clicked, microphones were thrust forward, and reporters sought every detail. Sarah and Lily, escorted by the SEAL team, answered a few questions, emphasizing the importance of honesty, courage, and dedication. The story was already spreading rapidly, an extraordinary mother-daughter bond validated in the most dramatic and public way imaginable. In the car afterward, Lily leaned against her mother, exhausted but elated. "Mom," she whispered, "I told them the truth, and they finally saw it." "They know now," Sarah smiled, her hand brushing Lily's hair. "Yes, you did. And you were incredible. Today, you showed courage, honesty, and insight. I couldn't be prouder." The journey home was quiet for a while, each absorbed in the weight of the day. But the atmosphere was lightened by relief, pride, and an undeniable sense of victory. This was not just a legal win, it was a profound affirmation of trust, love, and shared courage. For Judge Harris, the day would remain unforgettable. He had witnessed firsthand a rare intersection of extraordinary life, ethical parenting, and human courage. The case challenged every assumption he had held about routine proceedings and parenting standards. He realized that, in rare moments, truth and integrity could manifest in ways that demanded acknowledgement, respect, and admiration. Sarah Blake, calm and composed as ever, knew that the true victory was not just in the courtroom. It was in Lily. Her daughter had demonstrated the ability to observe, understand, and articulate a reality few adults could comprehend. Their bond, strengthened by shared experience, courage, and trust, had been publicly validated. It was a moment that would be remembered, not only by those present, but by all who would eventually hear the story. As they drove away from the courthouse, the sun setting over the city cast long shadows across the streets. The day's events had transformed lives. The mother, the child, the father, and even the judge had been altered by the extraordinary demonstration of courage, truth, and love. Lily's voice, once dismissed as the innocent imagination of a child, had changed perceptions, reshaped assumptions, and revealed a reality too compelling to ignore. This was more than a legal resolution. It was a testament to resilience, preparation, and integrity. Sarah Blake had been proven not only as an extraordinary professional, but as a parent whose extraordinary life had become a foundation for nurturing, courageous, and intelligent parenting. The day ended with clarity, resolution, and the undeniable triumph of truth. The courthouse doors had closed behind them, but the impact of the day lingered like an electric charge in the air. Outside, reporters and bystanders whispered in awe, recounting what they had just witnessed. A child whose courage had changed a courtroom, a mother whose extraordinary life had been revealed, and a team of elite Navy SEALs who silently validated every claim. For Sarah Blake and her daughter, the day marked not only a legal victory, but a profound affirmation of trust, resilience, and love. As they walked to their car, Lily clung to her mother's hand, still processing the whirlwind of events. "Mom," she said softly, "everyone saw what we've always known. They saw it today." Sarah smiled, her eyes reflecting quiet pride. "Yes, Lily, they did. And more importantly, you stood up and spoke the truth. That's courage in action." The drive home was calm, the city stretching past them in the golden afternoon light. For once, there was no tension, no sense of danger, only relief and the shared warmth of accomplishment. Lily looked out the window, her mind replaying moments from the courtroom, the awe on the judge's face, the hush of the gallery, the quiet respect from the attorneys. She had never felt so validated, so understood. Sarah's thoughts were deeper, reflective. She knew that the day's events would leave lasting impressions, not only on her family, but on those who had witnessed the extraordinary. The custody hearing had been more than a legal proceeding. It had been a demonstration of values she had lived her entire life: courage, discipline, and integrity. It had also been a lesson in trust, showing that her daughter's observations, honesty, and insight were not only valid, but powerful. Back home, the first thing Lily did was run to her bedroom, gathering drawings, small toys, and objects she wanted to show her mother as symbols of the life they shared. Sarah followed, observing with quiet amusement how seriously her daughter approached even the smallest details. "You've always seen the world with precision," she said, kneeling beside her. "Today, you used that skill in a way that changed everything." Lily's face lit up. "I just wanted you to be safe," she said. "And I wanted them to understand why you're the best mom." Sarah hugged her tightly, holding her close. "And now they do," she whispered. "And now you've shown everyone that courage, truth, and love matter more than appearances." The evening brought a rare calm. Sarah and Lily sat together, sharing stories and reflections about the day. The SEAL team, while trained to operate under high stress, had offered a subtle support network throughout the hearing. Their disciplined presence reminded Sarah that strength and loyalty extended beyond the individual, and she had witnessed firsthand how leadership, respect, and trust operated in both professional and personal spheres. For Lily, the day had solidified her understanding of bravery, not just the kind that comes from physical skill, but the courage to speak the truth, to act honestly, and to trust in those who guide and protect her. She realized that her mother's discipline had been a gift, shaping her into a thoughtful, resilient, and confident child. The court's recognition validated not only her experiences, but also her ability to observe, understand, and articulate them. Sarah reflected on her own journey. Being a Navy SEAL had required extreme commitment, constant vigilance, and unwavering discipline. Balancing that life with parenting had been an ongoing challenge, often misunderstood by those outside her world. Today, she had demonstrated that extraordinary skills could translate into extraordinary parenting preparation. Calmness under pressure and ethical guidance were not just professional requirements, but tools for nurturing her child. The story quickly spread beyond the courthouse. News outlets picked up the case, highlighting the extraordinary bond between a mother and her daughter, the courage of a child's testimony, and the remarkable presence of a highly trained SEAL team. Social media buzzed with admiration, inspiring discussions about parenting, courage, and the impact of professional discipline on personal life. For Sarah and Lily, it was both humbling and affirming to see how their experience resonated with others. In the days that followed, the family settled into a renewed sense of rhythm. While the extraordinary events of the hearing were unforgettable, daily life resumed its quiet routines. Homework, training exercises adapted for Lily, family meals, and evening stories. Yet, a subtle change lingered, a heightened sense of confidence and mutual respect. Lily knew she had been heard and believed, while Sarah understood the profound impact of modeling courage, integrity, and resilience for her child. The experience also brought reflection for Lily's father. Though initially skeptical and resistant, he began to recognize the value of his daughter's testimony and the integrity of her mother. His attitude shifted from adversarial to contemplative, acknowledging that respect for Sarah's parenting and trust in Lily's insights were essential to moving forward in a healthy, constructive way. Judge Harris, too, reflected on the extraordinary proceedings. The day had challenged him, reshaping his understanding of custody, parenting, and the ways courage and integrity manifest in unexpected forms. He realized that, while laws and protocols guide most cases, extraordinary circumstances sometimes require a broader perspective, one that acknowledges character, lived experience, and the tangible demonstration of values beyond mere legal documentation. For the SEAL team, The case was also a reminder of leadership and mentorship. They had witnessed the tangible impact of preparation, discipline, and ethical guidance on the youngest member of a family. They had seen firsthand how a parent's professional skills could translate into nurturing a capable, courageous child. Their respect for Sarah Blake deepened, not only as a leader, but as a mother who embodied the principles they upheld every day in their work. Months later, Sarah and Lily continued to share their story quietly among friends and colleagues, aware of its impact without seeking attention. It became a story not only about legal victory, but about truth, courage, and the extraordinary strength of family bonds. They understood that the lessons extended beyond the courtroom. Honesty, preparation, and integrity could transform relationships, influence perceptions, and inspire confidence in ways that no argument or policy could. Lily often reflected on the hearing with a mixture of pride and humility. She had learned that courage is more than physical bravery. It is the courage to speak, to act honestly, and to trust one's instincts. Sarah's life had been a model of preparation, resilience, and ethical guidance. And Lily now understood how these qualities shaped her own character. She felt empowered, confident, and ready to face challenges with clarity and courage. Sarah, observing her daughter, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Parenting had always been about more than providing safety. It was about teaching resilience, ethical decision-making, and bravery in everyday life. The hearing had confirmed that their bond, rooted in trust and mutual respect, was both visible and impactful. She knew that, together, they could face any challenge, whether in the courtroom, in life, or in the extraordinary circumstances that occasionally arose in their unusual world. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over their home, Sarah and Lily sat together, sharing a quiet moment of reflection. The events of the day had changed them, strengthened their bond, and provided validation for a life lived courageously. For both, the lesson was clear. Integrity, preparation, and love were more powerful than skepticism, doubt, or conviction. The extraordinary had become visible, undeniable, and unforgettable. And in that quiet evening, with the world outside continuing its routines, Sarah Blake and her daughter Lily understood the profound truth of their journey. Courage, love, and unwavering integrity could transform not only a courtroom, but the hearts and minds of everyone who witnessed it. Their story, extraordinary yet deeply human, had reached its resolution, not just legally, but emotionally, morally, and profoundly.